You're BCG advising businesses. What are you picking up?
So Judy, I think I share some of that. I would say that the one good thing I am hearing more of is this recognition that, in fact, we can change business models and we can innovate around business in ways that deliver improved environmental and social outcomes. And so it's that innovation of the business model itself. It's that ability to actually say, wait a second, we have always thought that we could build better businesses. There's a lot going on under the ESG umbrella. And some of this pushback has actually said, well, wait, explain it again to me. Why exactly is this change you're proposing in your business, the business model, the way you're hiring? Why is this going to be good for your business over time? And I think you're right about that has led people to sort of re-anchor in the core of what this was originally about, which is how do we have business being this positive force to decarbonize, to drive, press down what has been the inequality gaps that have been there, that has accelerated our
Right.
excitement around talent. All of that is happening, and I think that's good. So I think there's this balance of, it's a maturing, I would argue, in the space.
So you said the magic words, you said over time.
Yeah.
Linda, yesterday you and two other executives from large corporations spoke, but kind of was centered around the work that you've done on what you term collective genius. And I know you're working on another book now about kind of how do you bring this to scale. Can you say a little bit about that? Because you made some pointed comments yesterday about time frame.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm feeling is a tremendous amount of energy in my head and my heart, very aligned with what was described. I'm a little worried about my hands. How do we execute this? So what I've been feeling, and collective genius is a piece of the puzzle, I think we have a collaborative mindset, and we know we need to collaborate. Collective genius is about the fact that we need to collaborate across diversity of thought, diversity of experience, and I see this here, and it's invigorating to my head and my heart. People have the right mindset. People certainly want to get it done. I think it has been clarifying for all of us that we've got to move forward on this, but we're still trying to figure out how we execute this stuff. And collective genius is about really how do we actually learn to collaborate across the sectors when many of us live in very siloed organizations and can barely collaborate with our own colleagues, if you will, inside that organization. But what we need now are leaders who know how to be bridgers across difference and who know how to catalyze movements across sectors. So where I am in collective genius is now, the new book is called Genius at Scale, because begin to understand even more that none of us can go it alone. And thank goodness we have digital tools and data to help us actually help with this collaboration. And we do need to experiment and learn together. And even, to experiment and learn and innovate with all the risks associated with that when we all have different agendas, fundamentally, even though we have the shared commitment to ESG, I'm worried about what should these hands be doing and how are we going to actually execute on these new business models that are going to be necessary for us to move where we need to move.
Now, what I love about what you've said, Linda, is, we've long pressed this idea that a sustainable company needs a sustainable ecosystem. And I can only be as sustainable as the ecosystem allows.
Explain what you mean by ecosystem.
So
here.
all of the things, let's suppose, for instance, I have a commitment to be circular, but there's no recycling infrastructure. Right?
Yeah.
And that's a public good that needs to be in
EVs,
place.
no batteries.
Right. Or I need to have the market incentives going to give me the confidence with my investors that I can make these capital investments ahead of where the market appears to be right now, right? So this, your collective point, I think, is hugely good, because I can only press so far as a company. And in some cases, I can only press so far as an industry.
Yes.
So if you think about the food system transformation and the full value chain, right, from farm to table to organic waste and its repurposing into energy, how many sectors does that cross, to your point? And so if I'm a business leader and all I do is think about me, I'm going to bump against boundary after boundary after boundary. So I may proclaim ambition. My hands aren't doing much.
No. And it's very hard work to do. So I'm not trying to imply that, we all do need to have more skills and more practice doing this. And I say practice because innovation rarely comes from planning. You plan as much as you can, but eventually you have to do an experiment and do that shared learning together and move forward. And so we're going to have all the missteps and failures as we try to work collectively across, because we do have different priorities,
Right.
different constraints, different capabilities. And so finding leaders all across the organization that are capable of doing their part in helping this kind of sector, across sector movement, I think we still have lots of work to do.
Let's stick with this, like who's inside the corporation. One of the things that came up, again, surprisingly to me, I had mentioned it in my opening remarks, but it came up in a number of different contexts, was how important the employees are as a motivator today. You're in a business school, you're at Harvard
Yes.
Business School, you teach executives, I'm sure, most of the time, but you also are teaching
MBAs.
MBAs.
Teach both.
What
Yep.
are you picking up? Do you align with his ideas that employees are a source and important motivation and kind of
Yes, I
catalyst?
think that they are. So my sense is that the generation, we're doing a big study on the digital natives, and digital natives can actually, not completely tied to age, but we're trying to look at what's their point of view about what needs to happen in the world. So they are very committed to making a positive difference in the world. They're actually fairly cynical about whether or not business is really going to do it. So going back to this trust, my sense, and government, I mean, there's a lot of cynicism and not hopelessness. I think that they all think that they're sort of moving back to rugged individualism in
I
part
could do it.
because you need to have your own security. So I think that there's what their ambitions are and what they want, but they see us and they think, are these people going to be able to pull this off? Don't know. So maybe I got to protect me. And so that's the sense that I'm getting, particularly from we're not only talking to our own MBAs, and we're doing roundtables around the world to talk to both C-suite executives and also to talk to Gen Zs, millennials, et cetera, to understand how they're thinking about, in this instance, particularly technology, but they actually move and talk much more broadly than the technology. So I think that on the one hand, they want this. They're really worried that we don't have the capacity to deliver it.
Right.
And they are more collaborative. That's what the research says. They are more collaborative. But I think that they feel like the system, which is why I always tell the MBAs when I'm teaching them, my whole goal is for you to be powerful, because powerlessness is deeply corrupting. So, and I want you, I don't know what's in your heart, but whatever it is, I want to help you be able to have the
You wanna work on
influence you want to
the
have.
hands
Yeah.
part of
Yeah,
this.
to
Yes.
get done whatever you want to get done, and hopefully we'll expose you to
Yeah.
leaders who are doing things that actually are in line with what our values are. But I can't want them to feel more powerful. They feel kind of powerless, some of them.
What are you seeing, Dave?
Well, I think there's a huge amount of excitement in the potential, right? As well as, real concern over whether or not we can move fast enough, deeply enough, with enough change. But I think because this is a period where, look, the ways we have run businesses, the ways we have done investment have run into limits. And as long as we're honest about that and invite these young folks in to actually be the engines of innovation, to give them the space as leaders to say, we know you have lots of ideas. You can be part of reshaping industry for the future. You can be part of reshaping capitalism in a better way. We're giving you the permission to innovate. But that's a lot of that bravery of leadership to not believe I have to define everything, but I have to create the space under which these talents can go. And so there's, in our kind of work as BCG, across the board, the most consultants are excited about any case that's touching sustainability, climate, and environment. They want to believe that they have the power to make the world better.
I have to believe in that part. Thank you for that. I feel like what's compelling about a corporation is that it has the ability to amass the resources and the talent. And
Yes.
clearly, we can't tackle the big problems without working across lines and through industry and across different sectors. But I feel like the organizing principle of the corporation does empower employees. So I'm watching this space carefully because I believe that they're an incredibly important accountability mechanism. But let's turn to capital. You mentioned the capital that we need.
Right.
So you've done a lot of work at BCG on kind of this notion of finance, sustainable finance, where this is going to come from. And we had a session yesterday about kind of CFOs. Are we going to get the innovation we need from the CFO's office, or what does it require to really work with chief financial officers and to unleash the resources to those things that take a very long-term commitment? This is all about often inside a company proving that there's going to be a return, and yet the return is almost hard to measure in some cases. So what's
Yeah, so-
the conundrum there, and how do we unpack that?
Yeah, so Jude, I think we have a couple things going on, right? So the first is we have spent an awful long time optimizing, right? So every CFO, every COO has worked hard to optimize that business model, to squeeze out all the cost, all the excess, all the waste, everything else. By definition, almost any change you do is going to be suboptimal compared to where things are today, unless you innovate the business model. And so if I sit back as the CFO and I
What do
basically,
you mean suboptimal compared to the way things are
Well,
today?
let me-
I mean, the planet's burning. What do you mean by what?
as
Suboptimal
a
meaning what?
corporation, against the returns that I've been able to generate off the assets that I currently have, off the market products that I currently have, and all of a sudden you're telling me, well, wait a second, I want you to make investments. I want you to improve these assets so they're less carbon intensive. I want you to develop products that are going to be more circular and sustainable. And, I want you to do that as quickly as you can. I'm trying to put all of that through the same assets, the same business model, the same products, right?
Yeah.
By definition, a lot of that isn't going to generate the same level of immediate profit unless I innovate. And what we see over and over is companies that are really committed to doing this innovate across those products, markets, business cases, relationships, right?
Right.
In ways that basically create profitable opportunities. So if I'm a CFO and I'm not saying, all right, I want to be tightly connected to my chief innovation officer, to my chief strategy officer, to really understand the full potential of the business over time so that I can make the right case, right? And I can understand what this could mean to our shareholders and make it visible to our board, because they should have the horizon and the stewardship for the longer run. And I should, hopefully, also be interested in the full potential of the corporation. Then I can make this happen. But I also need, in the capital markets, I need the honesty to say, look, we have the single biggest industrial transformation in the last 60 years underway. Am I going to be timid here, or am I going to? We will restack industries. We will restack the competitive order of companies with industries. We're going to change the competitive standing of nations by the rate at which we embrace the opportunities in this industrial transformation. If I don't make both these risks and opportunities clear to those investors, and the investors don't say yes, and I'm going to innovate like I have in the past with financial products that allow you to be able to make those investments, then we're going to slow this thing down in ways that are not going to be helpful. So I need to see innovation in the business, and I need to see innovation in the capital markets. And as the CFO, I'm the linchpin here between trying to say, how do I finance as aggressively as possible the transition which puts this company on the best path for competitive success over time?
Wow. Linda, over to you. You spent a career thinking about innovation and leadership. What's your reaction to this? And I want to spend just a minute on boards as well. But
Well, I must say, I have a simpler answer because it's what you said is exactly right. But I do think I want to go back to collaboration, experiment and learn.
Yes.
Experiment and learn means we're going to have missteps. It's an experimentation. And when you experiment, some things work, some things don't work. So it's going to be suboptimal. So what we actually see is executives don't even want, one of the things about boards need to think about how they reward and if you will, punish those people they ask to do these kinds of things. So if someone is willing to take on, a pretty senior person who has a lot of potential, you have two choices. You can do this thing that's a should, you can do this thing that's a could. And the could is where, in fact, a lot of ESG will fall. If I do the could, I'm real aware of the risks and I know that I might have a misstep or two. If I do the should, I've done it time and time again, let me go back and maintain the status quo. So I have to say that what boards need to understand is if you want people to really work on coulds and move you ahead, you got to think about your own sense of how you assess performance of these high potentials, because I know good and well, and the other thing is senior executives don't like to take jobs that require them to work where they don't have a whole lot of formal authority. We're talking about collaborating with people and organizations, et cetera, over whom you have no formal authority. So why would I take that job as opposed to the one that is clean, neat, fits the status quo? They won't, because boards will punish them unless they actually have a conversation, understand the logic of what we're about, and you have to hold people accountable. I don't mean, but you also need to understand, by definition, if you try to innovate on a business model, it is going to be suboptimal for some period of time as you learn.
There was a compelling example yesterday from a very large corporation, and the executive was able to eke out enough money to really prove it was a pilot, right? He ran a pilot, but he started a long time ago doing this. And so now 10 years later, we're really seeing kind of significant, massive change. I don't know if it's too late to be starting with small pilots inside large corporations, waiting for them to prove the point. And then, so do boards get this? This is what I
don't.
Do they understand what's ahead?
I wrote an article a few years back on boards and innovation, because being a board member myself, I began to wonder, okay, we're saying innovate, but really, what are we doing? Right. And I'm not talking, I've been on wonderful boards, so I'm not talking about mine specifically. So Egon Zehnder helped me do a series of roundtables and dinners with board members and saying, you know, really, what goes on with innovation? And so one of the things that we did talk about is what's the reward system for those high potentials, and whether or not most organizations would say they don't have one that works that way. Did a case recently, and I've looked at in depth at Procter & Gamble, and the head of innovation at the time said, the problem we have is that we have everyone who knows how to create value to do the shoulds and deliver them, and we're very metric oriented, but we don't have a lot of people who are willing to do the coulds, to be the game changers. Yeah. In fact, we probably don't reward them. So they had to create a whole nother career path so that, in fact, people would be willing, these people coming out of business schools or whatever, would be willing to take those assignments, even though they came to Procter & Gamble because they wanted to be innovators. So they got there and learned pretty quickly, you want to get ahead? No. Do the shoulds, those metrics that are clear, because if you try one of those coulds where the metrics are a little less clear, et cetera, or you got to work with people when you don't have formal authority, it's risky.
All right, Dave, last minute to you on boards.
Well, I just really I just really resonate with what you said. I think this is a uniquely important time for the board to actually provide the horizon, the courage, stimulate the ambition of the executive team, and give them the permission to win the future for the company. And I think that if there's ever been a time where you need that courageous board to say, it's okay, we want to win for the future, it's right now. That's what the board needs to do.
Let's hope they can step up.
That's right.
All right. Thank you both.
Thank
you.
Enjoy
your day, and this has been a great conversation.
We are always happy to talk with you, Judy.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for the invitation.